At the start of the 20th century, there were 11 estates located in Lenora, Iflat, Wales, Diamond, Enmore, Lebon Intention, Ogle, Albion, Blairmont, Rosehall, and Skeldon. The sugar industry remained at the heart of the economy and accounted for more than 63% of agricultural output and more than 20% of the gross domestic product in 1976. GuySuCo was producing 337,776 tons of sugar and had a workforce of 28,406 persons at that time. Over the last decade, the sugar industry has had to be propped up by bailouts at the expense of the provision of better quality education and social services for the people of Guyana. GuySuCo incurred total losses of $40 billion with sales of $230 billion from 2008 to 2015. By 2015, the management of the company had accumulated a mere $11 billion in internal equity and had decreased working capital by $25 billion.
So it is the single and oldest continuous industry in Guyana, and it is hemorrhaging. The government cannot afford to keep on bailing it out. There has to be change. The very nature of the change is something that is still to be decided. But the model that we inherited and we have used, the plantation model that we've used for 3.5 centuries, has failed.
So what's next? The government has issued a white paper which outlines its plans to modernize, contract, and diversify the sector. A small but profitable sector will serve Guyana better than a cumbersome and faltering industry which has lost its profitability. Minister Holder in his budget presentation pointed out as such, noting that the industry cannot function in its current state.
The country's framework for governing the sugar industry has to evolve. It must become more in tune with reducing vulnerabilities, resolving institutional and legacy issues, and diversifying away from sugar to more sustainable industries. Mr. Speaker, since taking office, government has supported GuySuCo with $32 billion, with a $6.3 billion allocation in 2018, and another $2.3 billion estimated for 2019. Obvious evidence of a caring government.
Before any decision could be made, though, the government installed an interim management team to manage the company's affairs in June 2015. In that same year, the corporation sold the Skeldon cogeneration plant and the portion of land under its control for $5.1 billion. Those proceeds were used to meet operating costs and a part of the capital expenditure. Further, an urgent injection of $12 billion was needed to reap the crop in season, and government was forced to provide a bailout. With the near bankrupt position of the corporation being recognized by the government, a commission of inquiry, COI, was established by the administration in July 2015 to examine the situation in the sugar industry and determine what needed to be done to make it viable again.
Being faced with these realities, which we inherited as a government, we made a decision that this important national institution and the largest single employer in Guyana, we needed to take a closer look at it and a careful consideration and a carefully considered policy to ensure its survival and a return to viability. This was clear to us because besides the reports, writings, political back and forth, statistics, numbers, and technical arguments, we were dealing with lives, real human situations that translated into day-to-day bread and butter issues. We therefore took the prudent course of action to appoint a commission of inquiry into the Guyana Sugar Cooperation in July of 2015. to make recommendations on charting the way forward and to returning the industry to financial viability.
The government therefore embarked on discussions with the opposition, GuySuCo, the Guyana Agricultural and Workers Union, GAU, and the National Association of Agricultural, Commercial and Industrial Employees, NACI, to determine the course of action for the future of the cooperation in the interest of all stakeholders. That the opposition and unions came together with the government to brainstorm a solution and a way forward is testament that the gravity of the situation was realized by all parties. At the first meeting held in January 2018, President David Granger noted that it is time for all stakeholders to come together, putting aside all prejudice and partisan interests, and work for the national good. At that time, head of GAU, Mr. Komal Chan, had said that he is pleased with the outcome of that meeting, as he noted that the union is now committed to working with this administration to draft feasible solutions.
Oh, we are certainly pleased with this meeting. It's the first meeting we have been able to have with the government, and we believe that the meeting took place in a positive atmosphere, and we recognize that the government itself pays a lot of attention to the meeting, and the President did address us and expresses regret that he couldn't stay through, and I think it is a good beginning, as was emphasized by the Prime Minister Moses Nalibutu. We are pleased from the union and GAU, and NACI has expressed this also, that we had this engagement.
And of course,
and it spells out that there will be future engagement. All is to ensure that in the interest of the workers and the country, that we move forward.
Through this evidence-based approach to policy making, which saw consultations with the unions and other stakeholders, Minister of State Mr. Harman said that the Commission made several important recommendations, among which were that the cooperation should be privatized within 3 years, a serious evaluation of all diversification options be conducted to avoid total reliance on sugar for GuySuCo's revenues, an evaluation on the options for GuySuCo should be done, an amalgamation of the Wales and Iflot estates, and assigning all their cane to the Iflot factory, which was operating at 50% capacity, and the cooperation should divest itself of the Skeldon estate. Despite these recommendations by the Commission, the government opted to ask GuySuCo to come up with a plan of action based on these recommendations and how the issues identified will be dealt with.
After many days backward and forward, in fact many weeks, GuySuCo came up with a plan of action, how they will deal with these issues. The plan was aggressively interrogated by the cabinet, and eventually a document was put out. That document itself became the basis of the government's position, which was laid on the table with the unions, with the political opposition, with the representatives of the estates. And I see here a document as part of the conference material that was put out by GAU. This was in fact GAU's response to the government's position at that conference. Started in December of 2016, and I see this one is dated February of 2017. But that was an important conference. That was what we call sitting at the table. Put your issues on the table and let us discuss it. GAU put their issue on the table. NACI in fact said that they concurred with the position of GAU. The political opposition said they needed to have a study done. They never put anything on the table. So what we had on the table was a position by the government and a position by GAU. The government then looked at these positions, put them together, extracted the main issues out of them together, and prepared a state paper. which was laid in the National Assembly.
As a result of the closure of the estates, the government was forced to provide over $5 billion for the payment of severance for retrenched sugar workers. Workers who were owed $400,000 and below were paid their severance in full in the first quarter of the year. This represented approximately 46% of the workers affected. The remaining 54% of workers were paid 50% of their severance in the first quarter of the year, and the other 50% was paid in the first week in December. The severance paid in December also attracted interest, and this too was paid in full. The workers expressed gratitude to the government for honoring its promise of the severance payments. Mr. Andrew George said that he felt good having received his payments, while Clifton Ned said he too is pleased.
This is what I've called the end of the chapter, because we have been waiting for several months now. And I'm glad that the government have come through in terms of the final payments for all of the workers that attached to East Demara Estate. So it is good.
Well, I feel very good because I was waiting a very long time, and now everything happened and coming the right time because it's the Christmas holiday. You have a lot of fine things to do, and this week will coming good. I have some painting and a lot of work to do with it. So I'm glad to come now.
Another worker, Mr. Alvin Bradford, remarked that he's happy to receive his payments and thanked the administration.
Whatever happened today, I'm so proud of it because we waited so long for this moment, and today is the day for we all cane cutter should have been proud for today. I should have thanked the President, Mr. Ranger, whatever, and Nagamutu, whatever they do for us today. I'm grateful for it beside me and all the other cane cutter.
The government's efforts aimed at consolidating the sugar industry has paid dividends. On December 12, 2018, GuySuCo announced that it is poised to achieve its production target for the year, which is 103,000 tons of sugar. As on that date, 100,485 tons of sugar had been produced for the year. This is in excess of 12,000 tons more than what was achieved for the entire year of 2017 from the three estates, Albion, Blairmont, and Iflot. Thus far, the three estates have collectively surpassed their weekly targets on 26 occasions for the year, which translates to payment of the weekly production incentive. The qualified employees will therefore receive a bonus for the year 2018 as a reward for their performance, the value of which would be dependent on the final production, the entity said. Severance is not the end, however, for the retrenched workers. President Granger has given the assurance that the government will be working through its various ministries and agencies to provide support, particularly in the areas of microfinancing, skills training, and even through the provision of lands for farming to the workers.
And we are going to work with the unions, NASI and GAU, to make sure that the workers who cannot find employment in the estates are given a soft landing. That is, we will try to provide employment opportunities so that nobody has to suffer.
Minister of Social Protection, Ms. Amna Ali, also said that the ministry is deeply concerned with the realities of the current situation facing GuySuCo and the affected workers, and as such, stands ready to provide any assistance that it can. In this regard, she noted that the Board of Industrial Training, BIT, as well as the Port Morant Training Center will be utilized to train and upgrade the skills of the workers. Additionally, she noted that the service of the microcredit union at the ministry is available to lend assistance, as there are funds available for small startup projects. Further, At the 2018 presidential press conference in August, the head of state had announced that a state lands sales commission will be established to ensure there is a rational and transparent disposal of lands, which will no longer fall under GuySuCo, taking into consideration the dismissed sugar workers, ministries, and government agencies.
Once an estate has been closed, the lands will now be subject to the jurisdiction of, first of all, a state land sales commission, of which the SPU, the Special Purpose Unit under NISL, will have representation. The idea is that we won't sell off the family jewels. We'll make sure that the lands which are being taken out of sugar are placed to the benefit of the people of Guyana as a whole. Now, several anomalies and several contradictions may emerge. For example, the Ministry of Agriculture may need some lands in order to settle sugar workers who are interested in settling. The Ministry of Public Infrastructure will need some lands in terms of its highways and bridges. The Ministry of Communities may need some lands in terms of housing. And other ministries may need lands, and private citizens may need lands. So the State Land Sales Commission is meant to reconcile the differences among these various agencies, at the same time make a profit from the disposal of those lands.
In addition to this, Mr. Komal Singh, Chief Executive Officer of GuySuCo Construction and General Services Incorporated, has publicly committed to hiring approximately 100 retrenched sugar workers when the company opens its Modern Wharf facility in 2019.
We are hoping to create an additional 100 jobs by mid-June or July of next year when we finish our first phase of that wharf operation. Our target on the West Bank where we're doing our wharf is to assist some of those employees who used to work with GuySuCo and that would have lost job on that one side. Our primary push on this right now, we actually fast track it, and simply because of the level of unemployment in that area. Right now we have on part-time almost 20 employees from the Wales, Larry Strait area that is unemployment in that facility right now.